What a very different episode of Space Dandy this week. Out of all the episodes I have seen from the series from Season 1 and Season 2, this is by far one of the most unique episodes that has currently been written and been made, and that's came out for the anime. I think the only episode that comes close to this episode of Space Dandy would be that plant episode from Season 1 of Space Dandy. Now, this episode, truthfully, it really has so much more it could have went into it. There was so much more this episode could have had, but I feel like the overall impact and emotions from this episode was really good. It was a very good episode. I was actually shocked to see the way this episode was handled. For one thing, I do want to mention, once again, the iconic directors constantly switching in Space Dandy almost every single episode where the art direction takes a completely different path. Like, the entire direction this episode took was completely different from the entire whole of Space Dandy Season 2. I mean, Space Dandy Season 2, like, the first half of it technically was bad animation, or technically wasn't the animation, it was just the art style choice by the director. And the art style chosen in this episode is really different from anything I've seen. I mean, the illustrations in the ending song really just set up the overall atmosphere of this episode. Like, I mean, when you hear that just, nice song playing at the ending song, like that nice, good new ending song, and when you see the illustrations of the entire episode, the different points that, Dandy visited in, it was a really interesting way to end the episode off of. But the main concept that really got me intrigued about this episode was that Dandy died. He died by hitting his head and went to this planet called Limbo, and he realized that he was dead, and he didn't have to eat no more, he didn't have to sleep no more, stuff like that. And the episode, for the most part, the only thing I think that it really is lacking, the only thing that really puts this episode down, honestly, is that it could have went in so much more depth with this episode. I mean, the entire bit with Limbo, okay? This girl that was stuck there on this planet, and her entire family and planet just raged war and killed each other, they could have went in so much deeper into this story, and it made me want to know more. It really did. Out of every individual episode I've seen from Space Dandy, this is by far one of the most unique because it drags you in wanting you to know more, but right when it's starting to build up, the episode ends. So really, the episode's disappointing to a certain extent because I wanted more. I really wanted more to this episode because I was really fascinated by the way the theme of this episode really betrayed itself. Like, Dandy's character design was so vastly different from anything I've seen him. He usually has his pompadour, and he looks like Space Dandy, or Emo Dandy, different versions of Dandy. But in this episode, Dandy had like this robe on the entire episode, really badass. It looked like something you see from an RPG game or something, and you saw him like with hair, like awesome freaking hair, like all his hair was down. It just looked really cool. I liked his character design. His character design, I think, was one of my favorites from any episode I have seen. And it's just so interesting and fascinating how this episode was. It just, one thing I don't like about Space Dandy, the biggest thing I hate about Space Dandy, is that when they have episodes like this, for instance, like the plant episode from Season 1 or this episode, they don't go too far into it. I mean, they give us some good material, they give us a good episode, I really enjoy it, but they don't go deeper into it. I mean, they could have easily made this episode probably 2 to 3 more episodes long, because it's just how great it is. I mean, the entire aspect of Dandy being dead and mingling with the dead really sets up an entirely different plot altogether if this series had a blow. I mean, think about this. If Dandy was dead and had to live and cope with himself being dead, it'd be pretty fucked up. I mean, seriously, yeah, think about that. So, personally, the episode was so enjoyable, and it just really leaves you wanting more. And it leaves you wanting to see different stuff like this from Space Dandy. This is the stuff I like in Space Dandy. Even though it left me disappointed, this is the stuff I like in Space Dandy because it really gives you those different feels. Like, every episode of Space Dandy is a treat. It's unique, and you never should expect the same thing twice. And so that is why I think Space Dandy is so fascinating too, because there's always different directions with the art, the character designs, and different stories that it tries to portray in each individual episode, and that is why I think I love this series so much. Personally, if I had to rate this episode for the unique artistic value this episode got, honestly, from all the episodes, I would give it a 10 out of 10 for the artistic value alone. Just for, the way the art style decision was, the character designs, and the way the theme of the episode was, I would give it a 10 out of 10. Now, for the overall plot of the episode, which is very far in between, and really the plot was kind of weak, that's the weakest part about the episode, I would give the plot maybe a 7. Honestly. And I would give the characters, like all the other characters besides Limbo, I'd give them a 6 or a 5. But overall, enjoyment value factored in everything in, I would give this episode an 8.5. That's exactly what I give the episode entirely if I factor in everything, and hopefully we'll get to see more episodes like this, because this definitely was one of my favorite episodes. So everybody, tell me your thoughts about this episode of Space Dandy Season 2. Did you enjoy it? Did you hate it? What was your favorite moments about it? Personally, how do you feel about the theme of this episode? Do you wish Space Dandy would go more into these type of themes? Let me know in the comments below. I love all of you so much. You have a wonderful day or night wherever you live. Please be safe. Chibi out.